There you go. You see my presentation? Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay, let's start now. So, well, I'm going to talk about what I'm calling humidity heritage, and it's a long-term project. So I first need to talk about this story, or these two stories that come and make my work. In 1971, in El Zapotal, a small location in the Gulf of Mexico, archaeologists followed a group of smugglers to find their sources. They found several terracotta pieces over what was supposed to be a small hill. After observing the location of these anomic elevations on a flat land and the deposit of these terracotta pieces over them, they thought of the possibility of these formations, these hills, as made by humans. That same year, the National Institute of History and Anthropology allowed the archaeologist Manuel Torres to excavate the mounds on which these pieces had been found. So using a technique known as a trench, that's very common, they carried out trails, and inside one of the mounds, they found ceramic pieces, human remains, and a shrine to Mictlantecutli, the Lord of Death in Nahuatl Aztec mythology. So the peculiarity of the effigy of this deity, its throne and the murals, is in their materials. Non-burnt clay coated with stucco, that's a vegetable and mineral binder, that survived for 1,000 years approximately in these conditions. So the murals surrounding the shrine, the throne, depict what it seems to be an offering from beings of different realms, from trees, subterranean entities, priests, and in the same time, two of the panels depict the trajectory of the sun for a whole cycle. The Lord of Death is depicted in volume in his throne altar, sitting with his hands laying in the throne, with the headrest emerging from the backrest, and full with depictions of animals and geometric figures. Near the shrine, there were found terracotta volumetric representations of the Cihuateteo, the woman who died in labor, which are important in the cosmogony, also of Tlazolteotl, which is the earthen mother goddess of the cycles of death and birth, known as the Eater of Filth, the divine mother earth, the Pachamama, Gaia, all these in this cosmogony is a compost deity. So in the Aztec cosmogonic system, women who die during giving birth lie in the ground of earth in the seventh subsoil step, which is where the Lord of Death stays. Also, the Mictlantecutli has its throne. They are the axis mundi in a topological system, the counterpoint of the highest step of the supraworld, the sun where the heroes lay. So both make the earth spin around the sun. These sculptures of terracotta burnt clay give clues and open several problems. They were made to be burned in order to be broken, to be sacrificed. So the artist knew the process of heating clay to make low temperature ceramics, and so this had a symbolic value. So they decided to depict the Lord of Death from mud, not heated clay. We don't know why, but it seems to be a relation with the with the deity and the ecosystem, the materials, the positions of stars, and so on. Their language was an assemblage with astronomy, natural cycles, human technology, and performativity. So their shrine was product of the ecosystem with the human agents on it, and this tendency and peculiarities reappears through images in American continent after the invasion and colonization. The politics of archaeological heritage of the second half of the 20th century in Mexico ordained the expropriation of relevant found objects to be gathered in the national museums. Since the impossibility of moving the shrine, the cultural heritage institutions ordained the building of an in situ museum and the dismantling of the earthen architecture, moving of terracotta objects and the human remains were took to the Museum of Anthropology in Jalapa, and were restored, which is odd since they were made to be sacrificed. This caused the destruction of the total shrine, its sense, its place, but also the ecological participation in symbolic and biogeochemical terms of the earthen architecture. From bad to worse, the in situ museum made to protect the shrine was built of cement, which caused a change in the relative humidity of the stucco and the non-heated clay, causing the erosion of the murals and the effigy of the Lord of the Dead. Every restoration made since then has been inadequate and the cause of new conservation problems. Doctora Berta Miramontes, in her paper on the latest registers of the shrine, reminds us that a heritage should be interpreted and conserved with its physical context and its constitutive material, as both are epistemological influences. The in situ museum building doesn't allow the adequate preservation and also doesn't represent the links with the ecosystem. So here, as Karen Barat has pointed in one of her texts, power is not only constraining, but productive, operates not only in the subject, but in the physical realm. Also, the well-known triple of conservation, if we care about it, it's stability, legibility, and reversibility, and none of them appear. In the same paper by Berta Miramontes, she points they needed to register the volumetric changes through a dimensional scanner, and the sessions were carried in the rainy and the dry seasons, since the shrine is directly in contact with the natural soil. So it changes its dryness, its volume, and its resistance. This aspect gives me a clue to a possible model. Adoratorio, my new project so far, has been a presentation of the problem, a scale model of the shrine replicating the materials, dry mud and the stucco, and the scale model of the microclimate that slowly erodes the figures. It's not less important to point that these same heritage politics restrict the photographical register of the shrine. When I started working on this project, I was captivated by the local legend that Rufino Tamayo, one of the most important Mexican muralist painters, came to my town, Jalapa, and took the opportunity of his stay to visit the shrine. Without any record, it is well known that in front of the effigy, he said, "I have seen the Lord of Death, I can die now." And he died exactly 1 month after his visit in 1991. So, because of the impossibility of the photographical record and not having any documentations with rumors of this anecdote, I have used this painting to model and to put in the same level of depiction the archaeological site and the last will of this painter. I still need to use these restrictions as part of this new model. Intuitively, I trust in some relations between technical, true thought and aesthetic thought, and interaction, conceived by understanding agencies not as an inherent property of the individual or human to be exercised, but as a dynamism of forces. My intention now is to model a new habitat for this altar with the use of fog fences, the Sontle stone, and the building of a new construction that transforms the idea of museum, that would allow not only the humidity needed to restore somehow the conditions that allow the preservation of the shrine, but also its ecosystem. So, point number 1, destroy patriotic melancholy, the end of identitarian national policies in order to go from humanity heritage to humidity heritage. It's not the first time that an artist wants to destroy a museum. In this case, I propose only to destroy the building. And the redistribution of wealth and the reintegration of this amazing object to its ecosystem, it also takes away responsibility to the anthropology institutions. Forget the idea of archaeologic zone in the exact terms and take on count the possibility of a reassemblage. Also, if they make music festivals in archaeological zones, we can think on a whole systemic reintervention of the site. First, the first option is to make an immortal underground. It is also more probable to protect the shrine by accumulation of earth, since humidity is still connected to it. And the second option is to construct a membrane-like tent of biosynthetic materials that integrate an architectural complex which dynamics are intertwined with the weather and the heat around the shrine. These two options include the use of fog catchers and water filters. Open the museum and the archive to digitality and its embodiment. We can even build a replica of this cadaver, since for people who likes replicas. But it's important to remark that a digital model is incomplete and inadequate. It needs materiality in its logic. If we think of the tendency of the privatization of water, obtaining water through only fog fences is no longer viable, since rain and water are no longer drinkable, and the use of technologies to use contaminants as binders or pigments. The excretion and the compost appear as elements in the cosmogony of terrenal rebirth in Tlazolteotl. She returns not as a volumetric representation, but as a filter, as the derail of the waste. Water fog fences and filters to separate, dump, and filter in water and fog, material of the sculptures, and the management of water, and even soil. So the materials of the images then are not only a mixture of mineral pigments and vegetal, but a lively ecosystem of fungi, bacteria, excretion, and secretions of several realms. Heather Sullivan, in a beautiful text, points that nature is not outdoors, but appears in the form of light, and in this case, also in the form of excretion, secretion, and soil and darkness.
Just so you know, about 10 minutes.
Okay. The becoming of Tlazolteotl, the field and the dump, is spinders for the new objects. Also, we need to understand that we know about the Gulf of Mexico cultures during the classical period, not to romanticize them, but a critical insight on their myths and practice, closer to crafts, magic, and alchemy. There is a long list of techniques and materials that have been developed and explained through myths, legends, prayers, spells, and transubstantial experiments. This includes the reincorporation of the sun calendars, since the position of months and the shrine are fixed to the solar transit. The culture of the classic period had a cycle of 365 days, as we do actually. So biotic and abiotic exchanges occur in the surface of the mud, even though there is a self-organization of mineral matter through sedimentation, vibration, and pressure. So I want to finish saying that imagine biodynamic interfaces that might be creative critique that stop making common sense, the worst sense of them all, not only change our perception of nature, but our approaches and destroy our moral aesthetic judgments on it. On the other hand, allow the imagination to figure sustainability, not only to make the material laugh, as Derrida once pointed, but make it crave for revenge. And I like only to acknowledge Mohamed for the invitation, and my friends Rodrigo, Diandra, Irene, Ángela Ruz, Shamed, Saldaña, and Christopher Grajales Monteros, who all participated or have been participating in this project. And it's such an honor to share this table screen with my teachers and fellow friends of the New Center. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was very interesting.
Definitely.
Nick, do you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask really quick, Rodolfo. I work a lot with performance, I guess, and so the idea of archiving is a constant question in my mind, but I really am interested in kind of the case study that you bring about and how you're also thinking about preservation and, you know, the political balances of you know, how heritage has been defined, you know, as an anthropocentric and maybe a colonial project in some ways. And I really kind of, my question goes really along with Edna in the chat right now, thinking about how this some, as she says, are you trying to pursue this with some official institutions, or can this be applied to our reality? Would you just be able to kind of extend upon that and maybe a bit more of how, you know, you're thinking about the secretions and you're thinking about, you know, humidity and dirt as a preservation method, these natural materials?
Yes, thank you. I think that the INA, you know, this institution that preserves heritage, is quite aware also of the damage that has been made. The paper I referred to, it's from the 5 or 7 years ago, and they are aware of all the inadequate ideas of sustainability, and but also they remain with the same models and the same structures that doesn't allow quite changes. I've been in touch with several well, not several, 2 of them that are archaeologists that are aware also of my first part of the project, that has been just to make the model and to count this story of Tamayo and so on. But since the invitation for this event, I thought on, well, how can we manage a new model? And I'm just in this stage of thinking, and then I maybe should propose when I have a more fixed idea. So yeah, thank you, Edna, and thank you, Nick. Yeah.
No, thank you, Adolfo. Really, really appreciate it. And so I think from this point, I just will keep coming back with my reminder as